I never imagined one careless sentence could almost cost me my life. 3 years ago, I lived in a sleepy little neighborhood in Oak Ridge, Tennessee, the kind of place where the houses keep their porches clean and people wave at strangers because they once babysat their cousin. It was quiet, cheap, and anonymous enough that everyone knew just enough about everyone else to stay polite but not involved. I had just walked away from a 5-year relationship with the father of my little girl. We'd been done long before I said the words out loud. But the day I finally signed the papers, I realized I was lonelier inside that relationship than I'd ever been on my own. I was starting to taste myself again, the parts of me that weren't someone's partner or someone's mom, and I liked the flavor. That's when Ethan drifted into my life. He was a friend of my neighbor's cousin. I met him by accident at a backyard birthday barbecue next door. My daughter was with her dad for the weekend, and I had a rare stretch of freedom, so I wandered over for ribs and a few minutes of adult conversation. He was leaning against the fence with a beer, that easy way people have when they've practiced being liked. When he looked at me, his eyes went too warm. "Damn," he said, slow and sure, like he was trying out a line on himself. "You're literally my dream girl." I rolled my eyes and smiled, assuming he was the weekend's version of bold, the kind who thinks Bud Light grants permission to exaggerate. He didn't laugh it off. He repeated it slower, softer. "No, I mean it. You're exactly the kind of woman I've always wanted." I teased him. "I'd do anything for you." "Prove it," he said with a grin that made the hairs on my arm stand up. Then he wandered into the house. I figured that was the end of the flirtation. A shrug, a story to tell later. 10 seconds later, he was back on the porch holding a kitchen knife. Before I could process the absurdity, he pointed it at his own chest. "I'll show you my heart right now." "I swear." My stomach dropped. "What the hell?" I stepped forward and grabbed his wrist, muscles burning to stop him. I yanked the knife away like I was pulling a child from traffic. "Are you insane?" He didn't panic. He smiled with the kind of sincerity that makes your skin crawl because it's too absolute. "You said to prove it." I laughed then at a thin, nervous thing, because that felt safer than naming the fear. I convinced myself he was dramatic, intense in a way that could be charming. And for a while, that's exactly what he was. We texted, then talked, then dated. He listened as if I were the only voice in the room. He cleaned without being asked. He cooked. He bought my daughter small presents from the kinds of stores they sell innocence in. Stuffed animals, tiny sneakers. He even asked to meet her, and I, stubborn, said no. Thank God I said no. He took me out every Friday, left notes in my mailbox, and made me feel like a bright light that I mattered again after years of being invisible. But underneath that glow, there were little shadows. If I paused between texts, 5 more would appear. If I missed a call, there'd be a voicemail apologizing for something I hadn't done. He seemed to translate harmless silences into catastrophic neglect. I should have listened to that quiet, sensible voice in my gut then. One evening, we sat in my car in the Target parking lot, hunched over drive-through Chinese. The fluorescent lot lights made everything flat and honest. He asked, "Is there anything you want to do this week?" I was bone-tired from days of work and half a paycheck. I sighed and flippant said, "Yeah, I want to kick my boss's ass." For a moment, he was still. Then he laughed. That low, comfortable laugh that made me want to believe everything would be fine. "That's a good idea." I rolled my eyes. "I'm kidding." He smiled at me like he'd already planned something. We kissed. I dropped him at his apartment. The next morning, my phone buzzed. "Hope you're feeling refreshed. Your boss won't be walking for a while." My hands went numb. I read the text 3 times because my brain refused to let the words mean what they clearly meant. At first, I thought it was a sick joke, until my phone rang. It was my manager's wife, her voice small and raw. He'd been assaulted in the parking lot before his shift. A stranger hit him with a metal pipe. A shattered hip, a stretcher, and whoever did it had vanished. I called Ethan before my stomach had settled. "Please tell me you didn't..." He cut me off, almost proud. "Didn't you say you wanted him out of the picture? Now he's got 6 months of medical leave." "You're welcome." Anger ripped through me so fast I couldn't think. I yelled until my throat burned. He went quiet then, in a voice that was too soft for what he'd done, said, "I'm sorry. I just thought I was doing what you wanted." That's when everything started to come apart. I learned to count my words like stepping stones. Each sentence had to be measured, precise, safe. I stopped saying anything offhand. I caught myself mid-sentence and swallowed jokes whole. One night at the mall, I stopped in front of a display window and mouthed at a cream leather bag with gold clasps. It was perfect in the ridiculous way things in windows always are. Without meaning to, I muttered, "If I had that bag, I'd be happy even if I had to eat Ryusuiken every day." I regretted the careless joke the second it left my mouth. Ethan was looking at me. He didn't smile. "Babe, relax," I tried uselessly light. He didn't laugh. "I'll be right back," he said, and walked off with a speed that felt like a door closing. He didn't answer my texts. He didn't answer my calls for 2 days. When he finally showed up, it was in front of my apartment like some staged reveal. He sauntered up like he'd practiced the moment, the bag thrown over his arm. "The happiest girl in the world," he said, grinning. "Where did you get that?" I took an involuntary step back. He shrugged, casual, as if admitting to a weather report. "Robbed like 12 people." Something inside me folded. My fist tightened until my knuckles ached. He leaned toward me and whispered, "Now what do you want next?" That night the bag sat on my kitchen table like proof that my life had been invaded. He had beaten a man and stolen from strangers so he could give me a luxury trinket. And in his mind that violence translated into love. I told him I wanted to end things. For a beat he looked uncomprehending. Then his face contorted into something I still see when I close my eyes. Incredulous, wounded, as if my rejection was a personal betrayal. "That's a joke, right?" he asked. "No," I said. "It's not." He forced a smile, the kind people wear when they're faking being fine. "That's funny," he said, voice too loud. "I want to end this for real," I repeated. His eye started to twitch. "If that's what you want, we'll break up," he said. And then, as if bargaining with a fate he couldn't accept, "We can still be friends, right?" "No, Ethan, I don't want to see you again." He looked stunned, like I'd slapped him. "That's impossible for me," he pleaded. "If it's too hard, just pretend I don't exist. Close your eyes and imagine I've left this world." Then he ran off, sobbing. I let myself think it was finished. 2 weeks later, at 2:30 a.m., someone hammered on my door so hard the whole apartment shook. I peered through the curtain and saw Ethan, and he wasn't alone. A massive pit bull lunged at the leash, hair glinting in the hallway light. He looked up at my window and smiled like it was a joke I'd missed. "I can't forget you," he shouted. "So I'm going to fix that." I screamed and called the police. He tried to run, but officers caught him shortly after. I learned later what he told them, that he wanted the dog to ruin my face so he could erase the image of me from his head. If he couldn't picture me, he said, he wouldn't miss me. They charged him with attempted assault with a deadly animal, harassment, and stalking. He confessed and was sentenced. He went to prison. I moved across the state. New job, new apartment, therapy twice a week. My daughter never knew the man who had haunted my life. I protected her the only way I could. For 2 years, the world was quieter than I'd dared hope. Then one night, my phone lit with an unknown number. The message was short, deliberate. "I haven't forgotten you yet. Soon I'll destroy you completely." I didn't reply. I turned the phone off and drove to the police station. They took the report. They said they'd investigate. They sounded official. They always sound official. Since then, I've changed my number twice, installed cameras, refiled and tightened a restraining order. Still, every knock at the door makes my heart lurch. Every dog barking at night turns my stomach into ice. Every unknown number makes my palms sweat. And the sentence that started it all, "What do you want now?" lives under my skin. Because I know him the way no one else did. I know he would do anything, and when I say anything, I mean anything, to give me what I'd once asked for in a careless joke. It started with a smile. I was 19, still stuck in that strange limbo between teenage clumsiness and the idea of being an adult. Brighton's was my first real job, a bland department store where moms drifted through curtain aisles and teenagers hunted for cheap jeans. The pay was minimum wage, but to me it felt like freedom, like proof that I was edging into the real world. Dating had never been my thing. Prom happened, sure, twice. But both times were just awkward groups of kids too afraid to admit we didn't actually like each other. I'd never really kissed anyone. Sometimes I wondered if I even wanted to. My mom used to laugh and call me a late bloomer, and I decided to accept that, telling myself it was fine to be slower than everyone else. Then Landon showed up. He wasn't tall or broad like the guys other girls swooned over. Short, wiry, with restless energy, he carried himself like he had something to prove. His hair was an unkempt auburn mess, his green eyes sharp in a way that made you feel like he could see through you. Not my type, not even close. When my coworker Trish leaned toward me by the fitting rooms one afternoon and whispered, "That new guy, Landon? He thinks you're cute," I almost laughed. I stole a glance. He was by the stockroom, hauling boxes, sweat dampening his shirt. He must have felt me watching because he looked up, grinned, and held my gaze. That smile punched me in the stomach, hard. I hated the flutter it stirred. "Not interested," I muttered to Trish, waving it off. But that night, lying in bed, I kept replaying his grin. By the next week, he was talking to me more. Compliments slipped in casually, jokes about how much we both hated refolding clearance racks. It felt harmless, sweet even. I let myself flirt back because why not? No one else ever looked at me that way. He had a charm, an ease, that made everyone else fade when he spoke. After a month, he kissed me. It wasn't how I pictured my first kiss, not soft under stars, not after a sweet date. No. It was in the employee parking lot just past midnight. He cornered me near my car, voice low, saying how rare girls like me were, how much he liked me. Then he kissed me without asking. It was messy, urgent, my back pressed into cold metal. I didn't say no. I didn't say anything. I only felt a hollow drop inside me, like something had been stolen instead of shared. But I kept seeing him. We snuck into the back room after hours, kissing behind supply shelves, whispering in shadows. There was a thrill in it, the secrecy, the risk of getting caught. I told myself maybe this was adulthood, imperfect, rough, a little ugly. Then the teasing began. "God, you're such a klutz," he muttered one night after nudging me so I tripped. I laughed, brushing it off. But when he kicked the back of my heel so hard my shoe bent and cut into my skin, I snapped, "Hey, that actually hurt." He only smirked. "Don't be so sensitive. You're lucky I even joke with you." The jokes grew harsher. A smack on the arm that stung. A shove into the clothing racks that left me dizzy. Play fighting, he called it. One night he yanked my hair so hard a chunk tore free. I cried out. His expression hardened. "Don't be dramatic," he said coldly. I started hiding the bruises. From my parents. From coworkers. From myself most of all. Then came the possessiveness. At first it felt strange but flattering. He'd brush my eyeliner with his thumb and murmur, "I just don't want other guys staring at you." But it shifted. "Don't wear that unless you're with me." Why bother with makeup if I'm not around? Piece by piece I gave in. Makeup only for him. Clothes he approved of. "You're lucky I give you attention," he'd remind me, voice low, eyes burning into me. No one else would. And I believed him. Every word, every manipulation, I let it sink in as truth. Soon I was skipping shifts just to drive him and his friends around. I told my parents I was working late or hanging with Trish. Lies slipped out of me so easily it scared me. My paychecks evaporated into his gas tank, into greasy takeout bags, into cigarettes for his sketchy cousin who always smelled like stale beer. Landon never had money, but I didn't question it. I just kept giving. It felt like I was drowning, but I convinced myself that's what love was supposed to feel like, suffocating, consuming. And then there was the secret. I was Mormon. He wasn't. I couldn't even tell my parents he existed, so I swallowed it, locked him away inside me like a festering wound no one else could see. The night everything shattered, we were in the back seat of my car, parked in a dark corner behind Brighton's, the store looming silent around us. His hands moved faster, harder, pushing past where I wanted to stop. "No," I whispered. "I don't want to." He ignored me. I froze, my body stiff, my throat closing. I kept saying, "Stop. Please stop." My voice came out thin, broken, like it belonged to someone else. He didn't stop. Something inside me cracked wide open. I didn't cry until after he left, when I was alone in the car, clutching my jacket around me like armor, choking on the filth clinging to my skin. I didn't even know what to call what had happened. Rape felt too sharp a word, too heavy, but I knew it wasn't right. Not long after, I started seeing someone else. A nice guy, gentle, respectful, the kind of boy who actually listened when I spoke. Landon found out. It was the break room, middle of a shift. Trish was there, our manager, even a couple of new seasonal hires. Sandwiches halfway to their mouths, silence heavy. And then Landon exploded. "You stupid slut." His voice cracked the air, raw and venomous. "You wouldn't give it up for me, but you do for him." He repeated it louder, each word cutting deeper. Something in me snapped. I stood, hands shaking, throat raw. "Because I hated you. You used me. You hurt me." The room went silent. Nobody breathed. I walked out and never looked back. I quit that week. Found another job across town. Blocked Landon on everything, Snapchat, Facebook, Instagram. But sometimes in weak moments I'd unblock him, scroll through his page, hope for a message. I hated myself for wanting him back even though I knew he was poison. And then 5 months later the message came. "Hey, can you give me a ride?" Just 6 words, but my stomach plummeted. My fingers trembled above the screen. I hadn't seen his name in months, yet it felt like no time had passed at all. My chest tightened, mouth dry, heart racing like I was trapped again in that car. God help me, I wanted to reply. I wanted to say yes. But something deep inside whispered, don't. I closed the app, forced myself to stay strong, didn't answer. That silence may have saved my life. A week later, the headline hit, "Local man arrested for attempted murder." Suspect identified as 22-year-old Landon Wells. He had stabbed someone, left them bleeding in an alley. The victim barely survived. I read the article over and over, staring at the date, the exact night he had messaged me. He had been on the run. He needed a getaway car, and I almost gave it to him. I sent the link to everyone who had ever doubted me. Co-workers who rolled their eyes when I whispered, "He's abusive." People who laughed and said, "Landon's a nice guy." I didn't wait for replies. I blocked them all. 2 years. That's what he got. 2 years for attempted murder, good behavior shaving down his sentence. He's out now. Married, I heard. Baby on the way. A job at some gas station 2 towns over. And me? I still flinch when a man raises his voice. Still wake up crying from dreams that drag me back to that break room. Back to the suffocating back seat of my car. My husband, my real husband, holds me through the panic attacks. He knows everything. He's kind, patient, gentle, but the damage lingers. Landon broke pieces of me I'll never get back. And it burns knowing he gets to smile for family photos, play house, pretend to be good, while I'm left stitching myself together day by day. Sometimes I even feel guilty, though I did nothing wrong. But most of all, I feel grateful. Grateful that I listened to my gut, that I didn't answer that message. That silence saved me when nothing else could. Because survival doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it just looks like not replying. And thank God for that silence. I was 15 the first time I met Caleb. Nothing cinematic about it, no tragic meet cute, no wild coincidence. Just me, sitting in my room after finishing a pile of math homework, scrolling aimlessly through Instagram, looking at profiles of people from towns near mine. That's when his name appeared in my suggested list. Caleb. His profile said he lived in Wynn Haven, 45 minutes from me. He messaged me first. "You go to Eastview High, right? Pretty sure I saw you at the mall last weekend." I hadn't been near the mall in weeks, but I didn't correct him. Instead, I typed back, "Maybe. Where? Food court or bookstore?" That's how it started. Nothing dangerous, nothing wild, just light, teasing banter that felt safe. I was painfully shy back then, invisible at school most days. So when a cute guy suddenly gave me attention, it felt like I'd stumbled into some secret prize. Over the next 2 weeks, Caleb became part of my daily routine. Every night after school, I'd hop on Kik or Instagram, and there he'd be. He told me he was in 10th grade too, played guitar, dreamed of becoming a sound engineer. He sent me selfies, dark curly hair, soft brown eyes, hoodie tugged halfway up like he couldn't decide between comfort and looking cool. He wasn't movie star charming, just quietly magnetic, like every word he typed was meant only for me. 2 weeks in, he asked, "Will you be my girlfriend?" I said yes. Of course I did. We never met in person. That should have been the first red flag. But we were just kids, building fantasies out of scraps. He said his parents were strict. He didn't have a license. I understood, mine were the same. Sometimes he sent me voice notes. His voice was smooth, a little hushed, as if every word was teetering on the edge of a secret. I liked that. One night he asked for my address, said he wanted to send me something real, an actual letter. I gave it. No letter ever came. Like most online teen romances, ours didn't explode. It fizzled. Less texting, less spark, then silence. We'd been together for 10 days, maybe another week of lukewarm chatting before I unfollowed him quietly. I moved on. In high school, I dated Owen. A boy who was real enough to take me to prom and break my heart before college. I didn't think of Caleb again. Not once. Not until years later. I was 20 then, still in Wynwood, still living with my parents. They'd gone out for dinner with friends that night, leaving me with the house. I wasn't scared. Home alone nights were routine. I curled on the couch with Criminal, Mine's reruns flickering across the TV and my group chat buzzing, with plans for a hike the next day. The clock on the screen said 9:12 p.m. when I heard it. A dull thud. Muted the show, listening. Maybe something upstairs had shifted. Then it came again, closer this time, near the back door. My stomach tightened. The sliding glass door to the yard had motion sensor lights. I crept toward the kitchen window and peeked. The lights stayed dark. Whoever was out there was trying to stay hidden. My pulse thudded in my ears. Every true crime podcast I'd ever absorbed roared back at once. I gripped my phone, bare feet careful on the hardwood as I edged toward the hallway. From there I had a view of the back door without exposing myself. Then I heard it, a scrape. And then, impossibly, the clean, distinct click of the lock turning. But we had a deadbolt. The chill that shot through me made my hands numb. Before I could think, before I could breathe, the door slammed open with violent force, and 3 people stepped inside. I ducked behind the corner, my heart hammering so loud I was sure they could hear it. I didn't breathe, not even a gasp. From the corner where I crouched, I caught the side of one of their faces as they slipped through the kitchen into the living room. A girl, long flat brown hair swinging against her shoulders. She turned just slightly and my blood iced over. It was Caleb. Or the girl I'd known as Caleb. Only then did the truth sink in. I had never known Caleb at all. Behind her came 2 men. One tall with a fresh buzz cut, shoulders squared like he was used to taking up space. The other was shorter, thick-bodied, his hood pulled so low it erased most of his face. My body reacted before my mind caught up. I bolted for the stairs, skipping steps in threes, heart detonating against my ribs. My hands slipped on the bathroom lock, trembling so hard it barely clicked shut. I dropped to the floor, clutching my phone like a lifeline. One glowed on the screen. My thumb hovered. I could hear footsteps, heavy, deliberate, climbing after me. I hit call. 11, what's your emergency? A calm voice answered. Someone broke into my house, I whispered, choking on air. I'm upstairs. They're inside. The dispatcher asked me questions, grounding steady, but I barely heard. Because right then, the bathroom doorknob rattled. Click, click, then silence, and a man's voice. Smooth, casual. Hey, Allie, I know you're in there. My lungs seized. We just want to talk. Long time, huh? I didn't recognize the voice. It wasn't hers. Not Caleb, not Danielle, though I didn't know her name yet. I called the cops. I screamed back, voice breaking. He laughed. Low, dismissive. You think we care about that? Every muscle in me locked tight as he leaned closer, his tone dipping into something colder. We'll be back in a few. You better be ready to open up. Then retreating footsteps. I pressed the phone so hard to my ear it hurt. The dispatcher's voice cut through, urging me to stay calm, telling me units were on their way. I could still hear them downstairs, voices overlapping, things being shoved around, drawers slamming, laughter like they were celebrating. Like this was nothing more than a game. I stayed curled against the bathroom cabinet, whispering updates, seconds stretching into centuries. And then, silence. Too much silence. 5 minutes crawled by before the doorbell rang. A male voice outside, firm, professional. It's the police. You're safe now. When I opened the bathroom door, my body felt decades older. Downstairs was wrecked. The TV gone, my PS4, my laptop, my mom's jewelry box ripped from her dresser, the back door split open by crowbar teeth. I told the officers everything, that I'd recognized the girl. Caleb. Except not Caleb. I didn't know her real name. Only fragments of her online mask. A few blurry selfies from 2013. Some voice notes, the echo of a boy who never existed. But it was enough. Within 2 days, the police had her. Her real name, Danielle Parker, 21. A serial liar collecting fake identities like trophies. Her boyfriend, the tall one, had a record full of theft and home invasions. The shorter guy was his cousin, all of them local. Together, they'd hit 4 houses that month. all belonging to people Danielle had groomed online years before. I wasn't the only one. The officer told me she'd kept everything: addresses, names, family details scrawled in an old notebook, preserved like a hunting log. Even after years, my name and address were still there. Why me? I'll never know. Maybe she remembered the neighborhood. Maybe she wanted to impress her boyfriend. Or maybe I was just unfinished business. All I know is, for me, Caleb was a forgettable teenage blip. For her, I was never erased. I've never used Kik or answered a DM since. I lock every door, every window. I keep pepper spray in my bag. And whenever there's an unexpected knock at the door, my blood runs cold. Because now I understand. Sometimes the people who act like they love you aren't waiting to confess their feelings. They're waiting for the perfect moment to ruin you. I never thought it would end like this. When I first met Jared, he seemed like the kind of person who belonged in other people's good memories. Attentive, patient, the kind of quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. We bumped into each other at a winter art walk in downtown Minneapolis. Outside that old brewery they'd turned into a gallery. I was pretending to care about minimalist sculpture and sipping mulled wine when he came up beside me and said, "Looks like someone sneezed metal into a corner." It was a stupid line, and I laughed in the exact way I hoped I would. That laughter must have been his invitation. He was soft-spoken, well-groomed without being vain. He told me he was a carpenter. His hands were rough in the particular way carpenters' hands are. Calloused, practical, the kind of hands that make you think without words that they could fix things. I was 27, working as a behavioral therapist with children on the autism spectrum, tired in a professional way and allergic to games. Jared didn't feel like a game. 6 months later, we moved in together, fast by anyone's reasonable standard, but it felt right then. He slid into our life with Daisy as if he'd always been meant to be there. By that summer, my 5-year-old was calling him Jared Bear and drawing fish and foxes with 5 pencil strokes Jared taught her. She would clamber onto his shoulders on our walks around the lake and squeal at geese. For a while, I let myself believe in the little fairy tale we'd taped around the edges of our days. What I didn't see, what I refused to see, were the hairline fractures under the gloss. The first cracks weren't dramatic. He'd correct my version of a story in front of friends with that small, precise tone of his. The one that sounds like correction, rather than conversation. He'd remind me, almost fondly, that I should be grateful for someone who didn't mind baggage. The first time he snapped at Daisy, she cried for an hour. And when I told him it hurt him to hear her sob, he told me with an odd clinical calm, "Kids need to be toughened up." I told myself I was protecting stability. I always told myself that. February 11th, 2025. Entry from my hidden notebook scribbled in the cramped crawl space beneath the stairs. The middle portions are getting smaller. Daisy notices. Today she asked if we could go out for pancakes. I told her it's still not safe. But there's no more boom booms, she said like she was giving evidence. I wish that were true. It's been 4 weeks since the broadcast. 4 weeks since the world shut itself down. 4 weeks since Jared turned the deadbolt on the cellar door and said, "We'll wait this out." 4 weeks since I last heard a voice on the other end of a phone. I can still see the morning of January 14th clear as a photo. The sky was brittle and blue. Jared called from the living room in that lazy voice of his. Scrambled or fried, and Daisy was in her pajamas watching cartoons. I was halfway through brushing my teeth when my phone screen flashed against the bathroom mirror. National Emergency Alert. Biochemical exposure confirmed in Upper Midwest sector. Shelter in place immediately. Lock windows. Secure food and water. Do not go outside. I froze. Toothbrush poised, foam at the corner of my mouth. My hand wanted to dial my sister, to ask if she was seeing the same thing, but the line was dead. Jared, oddly, didn't move like someone hearing the end of the world. He folded into a kind of calm that didn't match my panic. "Finally," he said later, almost with relief. At first I thought he meant war, something big and external. But there was another thing he said that has stayed with me and unmoors me when I repeat it. We'll be safer without them. Our house wasn't big, but Jared had basement instincts. He'd stocked the lower level like a man who read the worst headlines and acted on them. Shelves of canned goods, boxes of pasta, MREs, water purification tablets. I used to joke that he was one bad news cycle away from digging a bunker. He smiled and let me joke. When the alerts came, the joke stopped being funny. We moved into the cellar and tried to make it ordinary. Sleeping bags, board games spread on the floor, Daisy's crayon drawings taped up like a child's gallery. The first week there had an odd intimacy, an enforced togetherness that felt at times like a second honeymoon. We rationed milk and eggs like it was a game. Daisy begged for apples and Jared snapped when I used a can of peaches on her. "We can't coddle her," he murmured one night, his mouth close to my ear, his voice soft but hard-edged. "She needs to adjust." Adjust to what, I thought. By the 9th day, I stopped asking because the question hurt too much to voice. The smell of the cellar changed, damp and close, a heavy odor that seeped into clothes. Jared started locking the cellar door from the outside and telling me it was safer that way. I didn't fight it, not yet. He began to disappear for hours, returning with a kind of distance in his eyes. Glassy, a breath that smelled stale. Then he would say he'd been patrolling. That's when I noticed the knife at his belt, clipped there like another tool. It sat between him and the rest of us, and I felt it as if it were an accusation. The night Jared didn't come back was January 31st. He left at dusk and came in at sunrise, hoodie sodden and smelling metallic, like an opened wound. Daisy slept in my lap, her breath warm against my wrist. When I asked where he'd been, he dropped a duffel bag at my feet and didn't meet my eyes. Inside were clothes, a wallet, keys, everything soaked through with dark blood. He said he'd found them abandoned along the road. I wanted to believe him so badly I didn't question it then. Only watched the way he kissed Daisy's forehead that night. Gentle, careful, as if she were a porcelain doll that might shatter with the wrong touch. The meat pies started that day. He called them a new recipe, a treat. The smell of them baking upstairs made my stomach twist. I forced myself to breathe through my mouth. When I bit into one, the texture was wrong. Too coarse, fibrous like sinew, and a chunk of something gristly hit my molars. Jared watched me while I chewed, smiled tight and small. "How is it?" he asked. Daisy, oblivious, said, "Mommy, it tastes funny." I lied so easily. "It's a new recipe, babe." Later, I found a tooth in the trash. Too big to be Daisy's. Worn older than anything from a child's mouth and the wallet. Michael Tansey, delivery driver. I held the ID like proof of a life that shouldn't have been in our kitchen. A sick thought climbed up my throat. Jared was going out and bringing people back. I couldn't force myself to say the words. He came down that evening with a plate of steaming pie and offered it to me. "Meat pies," he said, grin like a practiced mask. I said I wasn't hungry and he didn't push. He turned to Daisy and set the plate in front of her. She ate like it was ordinary, fork scraping the rim, pigtails bouncing when she reached for the last bit. I sat there watching my daughter in purple unicorn socks eat something I knew wasn't food, and I felt a scream fold into my chest until it became a small, hot thing I could swallow. That night, while I held Daisy and tried to breathe silently, Jared murmured from the other side of the room, "We're running low." My voice shook when I asked what he meant. He said, casual and clinical, "Oh, stock protein, you know, meat." The words landed like ice. Then he looked at me and said something that still wakes me up. "You're a small woman, babe, but she's growing fast. Real fast." There was no tenderness in it. Only calculation. I didn't sleep. Sometime during Daisy's nap the next day, I noticed the cellar door hadn't been latched properly. It felt like an invitation. I waited until midnight, heart hammering, and crept up the stairs with a screwdriver clenched so hard my knuckles whitened. The kitchen light was on and the house smelled of hot iron and fat. I opened the fridge and couldn't believe my eyes. A leg, skinned and unmistakably human, packed like a grotesque roast. Nearby in a Ziploc, a handful of toes bobbed in their own pale juices. My hands went numb. I threw a coat over Daisy's pajamas, grabbed her while she blinked sleep from her eyes, and we ran into the dark. Snow reached our ankles. My fingers couldn't feel anything but a burning cold. I didn't have a plan, just a single, brutal certainty that we had to get away. We made it to the neighbor's house, an elderly couple who had always smiled from their porch but hadn't answered our knocks in weeks. The door was ajar. Inside it was cold and still, the hush of a place emptied too fast. We stayed anyway. I dragged a table against the threshold, wedged it like a barrier, and we squeezed into their coat closet. I wrapped Daisy in my arms and tried to be small and silent. She kept whispering, "Where's Jer Bear?" And each time I told her, "He's gone. He's not coming back," the lie tasted like ash. The emergency alert changed at last. Rescue teams active. Remain in place invisible. Avoid hostile survivors. The chronology blurs. It's now June 25th in this notebook, but Daisy and I were pulled out on February 23rd. Jared never reappeared. Authorities labeled his house a red zone. Investigators found blood traces in the basement that matched 4 individuals, a teenage girl, an older man among them, but no full remains were recovered. Daisy is safe now. She's in therapy. So am I. Some days feel ordinary again, and some days don't. She still asks about those meat pies sometimes, in that simple, curious voice children have for things they can't categorize. I tell her it was a bad recipe, a bad dream. The lie is kinder. But I know what I smelled in that house, what I found in the fridge, and I stopped eating meat the day we ran barefoot into the snow. I used to believe that breaking up with my ex would be the hardest thing I'd ever endure. 5 years with the father of my son, 5 years of scraped together rent, fights over bills, slammed doors, and nights spent awake with a crying baby. I thought walking away would shatter me, but when I finally ended it, I felt something dangerously close to relief, like I could breathe again for the first time in years. 3 months into single motherhood, I wasn't searching for anyone. My world was Milo, 3 years old, a whirlwind of chatter and sticky fingers tugging at me to play even when I hadn't had a chance to eat. Romance wasn't just low on my list. It wasn't on the list at all. I didn't trust my own judgment anymore. But somehow he still found me. His name was Derek. My neighbor Marcus introduced us. "He's a good guy," Marcus said. "Bit of a loner. Keeps to himself. Said he noticed you in the parking lot but was too shy to say anything." I almost laughed at the idea of anyone noticing me. I wore old jeans, t-shirt stained with spit up. My hair usually tied back in a messy knot. Dark circles carved under my eyes from Milo's nightmares. I didn't feel like the kind of woman a man noticed. But I was flattered. And Marcus had always been kind, the type who'd jump my car battery in the dead of winter or keep an eye on Milo if I was running late from work. So when he suggested setting us up for a simple coffee at the diner, I said yes. That's how it started. Derek wasn't flashy. He was gentle. He listened, really listened, and when he spoke, his voice was calm, measured, never rushing, never talking over me. For the first time in years, I felt like more than just a tired, invisible mother. With him, I felt like someone again. The first 6 months were almost cinematic. He brought Milo a little red fire truck the first time they met. He cooked dinner when I worked late. The night Milo came down with the flu, Derek stayed awake rubbing his tiny back while I caught a few hours of sleep. I told myself I'd been lucky, that maybe I'd been wrong about trusting men. But the changes came quietly, like cracks spreading under paint. 1 beer at dinner became 2. Then I found miniature whiskey bottles shoved into his coat pockets. "Just takes the edge off," he said with a half smile. The edge of what, I wondered, but I didn't ask. I should have. The first real shift happened on a Friday night, a friend's birthday. Nothing wild, just a backyard barbecue with cheap beer and music from someone's speaker. Milo was with my mom, so I let myself relax. Derek drank, laughed, then drank more. When our friend Sam jokingly offered me a bite of his burger, Derek's hand shot out. He ripped the plate from me and hurled it into the bushes. "You hungry?" he hissed. "Go eat off the ground like a dog." The air froze. People stared. I forced a laugh, muttering that he was drunk, but the laughter died before it even reached my throat. We left early. He was silent in the car, brooding. At home, he slammed the bathroom door and locked himself in. When he came out, his face was wet with tears. He said he was sorry, said he was scared of losing me, swore he'd quit drinking. I forgave him, but apologies blurred into patterns. Cabinet doors slammed, fists hit walls. His words cut deeper than his hands at first. "You look tired. Maybe try dressing like a real woman." Then the cruelty sharpened. "No wonder your ex left you. You're lucky anyone even wants you." I swallowed them all, clinging to memories of the man who had bought Milo that fire truck, who had stayed up through the night with us. I kept telling myself, he's still in there. The first time he put his hands on me, it wasn't a punch. It was a shove. We were arguing about nothing. Our new upstairs neighbor, he insisted I was flirting. I rolled my eyes, muttered that he was paranoid. His face twisted. He pushed me so hard I hit the hallway wall with my shoulder. The silence after was louder than the impact. He stared, chest heaving, then whispered, almost pleading, "You made me do that." And again he cried. "I'm sorry," he choked, voice raw. I saw the way you looked at him." I panicked. "I love you. I love you too much. That's my problem. Love doesn't sound like that. Love doesn't bruise or make your hands shake or leave you counting exit routes in your head." Over the next 3 months, the line between love and control blurred until it was gone. I wasn't allowed to go anywhere without his approval. He read my messages, called until I answered, erupted if I took too long in the grocery aisle choosing milk. In arguments, he would pin me against the couch. Not hard enough to break skin, but hard enough to remind me he could. Then, as always, the apology. "I didn't mean it. You make me crazy. I don't know what I'd do if you left." Friends stopped showing up. The call stopped. They'd ask once, worry in their voices. Then the excuses grew longer and the distance wider. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I hadn't left sooner. Ashamed that I'd let my son and my pride be caught in the middle. Bruises I could hide under long sleeves and clever excuses. The parts that broke inside me weren't so easy to cover. The night it all changed, Milo had a fever. I told Derek I was going to sleep in Milo's room so I could watch him. He didn't care. He'd been drinking since lunchtime and was out by 10, snoring on the couch in the way that made his jaw feel slack and childlike. I told myself I was safe. At 2:30 in the morning, the bedroom door opened with a slow, deliberate creak. I kept my breath low and held Milo to my chest, pretending sleep. I could hear Derek's breathing, then fingers threading through my hair so hard it hurt. He yanked me out of bed the way you yank a blanket, and Milo's small body almost slid from my arms. "I know what you're doing," he growled, his breath hot at my ear. "You're avoiding me." He dragged me into the living room. The cold tile hit my knees, and for a moment the room tilted. My head spun. "You think you can hide in there?" he spat. "You're lucky I even keep you around. I should have let you rot when I found you." Then quieter, accusing, "You mean we're sharing someone else, huh? You think I'm stupid?" Before I could answer, he swung. Not a fist, his boot drove into my ribs. I curled, trying to crawl, trying to get back to Milo. He stepped over me and crouched so close I could feel the liquor on his breath. "You move again and I swear to God I'll make you disappear." He sat back on the couch and stared, hunting for any sign I'd do something he could use. I lay there for 30 minutes, shrinking inside myself, listening to the tick of the clock and the shallow rhythm of his breathing, praying he would pass out. When he finally did, I waited 10 more minutes, counting heartbeats. The world reduced to the sound of my own terrified breath. Then I stood. My legs trembled like I'd run a marathon. Milo had sleep crumbs at the corner of his mouth and confusion clouding his eyes. "Where are we going, Mommy?" he asked, rubbing his eyes. "Just getting water, baby," I whispered, and felt ridiculous and brave at the same time. As I crept past the couch, Derek's hand lashed out and clamped on my ankle. His grip was iron. "Where are you going?" he slurred. Just getting Milo some juice," I stammered. "Hurry the hell up." I nodded, pulled free, and ran. Barefoot, no shoes, just an oversized shirt, Milo in my arms. No phone, no wallet. We ran 3 blocks to the police station. It was after hours. The lights inside were dim. I slid into the little vestibule and pressed the buzzer until I could hardly feel my fingers. My heart pounded so loud I thought the officers would hear it through the glass. A voice crackled over the intercom. "Can I help you?" I couldn't answer. I sobbed into the mic until 2 officers opened the doors. A woman took Milo like she was made of calm and quiet, and a man wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. For the first time since I'd left the house, it felt like breathing wasn't a chore. Then a voice rose in the hall, "Dare Derek," someone shouting my name, furious, panicked. The officers locked the doors and told us to stay put. 30 minutes later, a sergeant sat across from me and pushed a folder onto the table. My hands trembled as I opened it. There, tucked into the glove compartment of Derek's car, was a notebook in his handwriting. A list of dates, most of them crossed out, and beneath each date a paragraph with the kind of detail that made my stomach drop into cold, distant places. He had written how he'd cut me up, where he'd bury the pieces by the river, how he'd make sure I'd never be found. The words swam. I felt airless. "What does this mean?" I whispered, the sentence barely a sound. The sergeant looked at me slowly. "It means you're lucky," he said. "Derek was arrested and charged, attempted murder, kidnapping, domestic assault." I gave a deposition, words that felt like stepping on glass every time I repeated them. Before the trial, before any of it could settle into the life we might have once had, I left the state. I took Milo and started again in a small New Mexico town where no one knew our names, where the walls didn't echo with his voice. I thought that would be the end. I really did. Then, a week before I left, a letter arrived at our old apartment. No return address. A single sentence written in red ink: "It's not over. You'll always be mine." Now I sleep with locks on every door, a bat propped beside the bed, a lamp left burning in every room. I check the locks 3 times. I drive with the doors locked, windows up. I flinch at small noises in the night. My son asks why the light is on, and I tell him it's because monsters are under beds, because monsters like the dark. But I know the truth. Monsters don't always hide under beds or crouch in alleys. Sometimes they live in your house. Sometimes they tie their own names to you and call it love. I used to think the cruelest thing a person could ever do was leave without a word, to vanish and leave you clutching questions that would never be answered. I was wrong. The cruelest thing is when someone stays. They stay long enough to carve themselves into your life, into your head, until every dream you ever held feels smaller, broken, dismantled piece by piece. In Ken Ridge, a town so small every whisper became gospel, I learned early on to hide the things that mattered most to me. So when I started sketching out my wedding at 11 years old, I kept it locked inside a battered leather journal. Its pages bulged with bridal magazine clippings, napkin doodles of floral arches, paint swatches of dusty rose and sage green. I never let anyone see it until Belle did. Belle was 3 years older, sharp-tongued and restless, with a smile that could wound. One afternoon, she yanked the journal from under my pillow and flipped through it like it was a joke. Holding it above my head, she sneered, "You actually think someone's gonna marry you? You're not even pretty. No guy cares what shade your napkins are." Her laugh stung worse than the words, but she was wrong. 12 years later, I met Nathan. We worked in the same glass building in downtown Rosielle, him on the 4th floor at some shiny tech startup, me 2 levels down in a law office that smelled faintly of toner and burnt coffee. I noticed him in the elevator first. Tailored navy suit, polished steel watch, the kind of man who seemed to carry silence like it was charm. He met my eyes every time. He smiled, not forced, not hungry, just steady. The first time we actually spoke was during a fire drill. I'd left my phone on my desk and he offered his so I could check the time. Something simple. That moment stretched into coffee the next morning, dinner the next week, and then entire Saturdays spent in his kitchen, where he insisted on cooking while I perched on the counter sipping wine. Nathan never pushed, never demanded. I mistook that restraint for gentleness. He listened when I told him about my parents' brutal divorce. He nodded when I confessed Belle and I hadn't spoken since I refused to lie for her during her custody battle. He squeezed my hand when I admitted I'd miscarried at 22, a pregnancy I'd carried alone. After years of being treated like filler in other people's lives, Nathan felt like permanence. So when he proposed on our 1-year anniversary, I said yes before I even saw the ring. It wasn't the fairy tale I'd once imagined. No fireworks, no string quartet beneath a sky full of lanterns, just Nathan, his voice low and steady, a ring in his palm. I told myself it didn't matter. I had him. I had love. Surely the rest would follow. The first warning came a week later, though I didn't recognize it for what it was. We were curled in bed, scrolling through possible venues on my tablet. I showed him a historic estate house in Savannah, Spanish moss dripping from oak trees, a glass solarium that shimmered in the photos. It was everything I had pictured since I was 11. "It's gorgeous, babe," Nathan said, eyes still on his phone. "But do we really want something that pricey?" "It's just one day," I hesitated. "You said you wanted it to feel special." "I do." He kissed my shoulder. "But can't it feel special without draining our savings?" I offered to cover the deposit myself. He smiled faintly, closed his phone, and rolled over. He never said thank you. The second warning came when I told him I wanted a child-free wedding. "I get it," he said slowly, "but my cousin just had a baby and she won't leave her with anyone. You know how she is? I'm not banning her, I said carefully. Just the ceremony. I want it quiet, focused, no crying, no diaper bags crammed into pews. He shrugged. Okay, your call. But it wasn't really my call, not then. Not later. The unraveling began quietly, like a thread tugged loose on a sweater. Nathan stopped showing up for planning nights. Work's been insane, he'd mutter, kissing the top of my head before disappearing into his office. He went silent during conversations about the guest list. Eventually, he offered no input at all. I told myself he was tired, overwhelmed. I told myself he'd come back around. But the truth that I was losing the wedding, the man, and maybe even myself didn't hit me until much later. Men aren't usually thrilled about centerpieces and RSVP cards, I told myself, trying to excuse his distance. Then one night, tucked into the back booth of a restaurant after our cake tasting, Nathan looked at me across the table and asked flatly, "Do you really think we need a 5-tier cake?" I blinked, caught off guard. What? It's just extravagant, isn't it? 150 guests, that's a lot of mouths. Do we need that much cake? I studied him, trying to read what sat behind his expression. Nathan, I've been dreaming of this since I was a kid. And that's when he said it. That's the problem. You're still thinking like a child. My stomach twisted. Excuse me? You're obsessed with appearances, with colors and napkins and guest lists. It's like you care more about the wedding than the marriage. His tone was cool, almost clinical. I couldn't answer, because somewhere deep down I feared he might be right. The next day he brought flowers. He kissed my forehead, said he'd been stressed, that he hadn't meant it. I forgave him because that's what you do when you're already in too deep. The final crack came 3 weeks before the wedding. I had just checked the last box, florist, photographer, custom vow books, when Belle called. I heard from Aunt May, you're banning kids, she snapped. That's right. You're insane if you think I'm coming without Elsie. I'm not telling you not to come, I said, forcing my voice steady. I'm asking you to respect the ceremony. You think I'm leaving my 4-month-old with a sitter in another state? Her voice sharpened. You always were selfish. I offered a compromise, I whispered. You can bring her to the reception. God, you sound just like Mom. I flinched. She treated people like props in her little fantasy, too. Guess it runs in the family. I hung up, I cried. Nathan said nothing. 2 days later, I came home to find him at the kitchen counter, whiskey glass in hand, scrolling through his phone. I talked to Belle, he said without looking at me. My throat closed. What did you say? That you're being unreasonable. I stared at him. You what? She's your sister, Callie. You're pushing away your family over napkin colors and baby policies. You had no right, I hissed. I have every right, he snapped, slamming the glass down. We're getting married, remember? That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the bathtub until my skin puckered, staring at the foggy mirror. Somewhere inside, the 11-year-old version of me whispered, he's not the one. But I silenced her, because starting over felt heavier than pretending. 2 weeks before the wedding, Nathan hosted a guys' night at our apartment. He didn't ask me to stay. I left to crash at a friend's. The next morning, I returned to a living room littered with beer cans, the trash overflowing. A red lace bra, one that wasn't mine, was wedged between the couch cushions. I didn't confront him immediately. I waited until that evening when he stumbled home from a business dinner smelling of whiskey. Who was she? I asked. He didn't even deny it. It didn't mean anything. It was a mistake. I felt the floor fall away. Callie, please, don't throw this away over one stupid decision. I left the room. I didn't cry. I couldn't. The next morning I called off the wedding. My mother begged me to reconsider. Nathan's family sent flowers and sympathy cards. Belle didn't say a word. Nathan sent me one final text. You'll never find anyone who tolerates your crazy the way I did. Good luck. I moved out, blocked his number, packed away my wedding journal for good. It took months before I could even look at another man. A year before I stopped flinching when someone complimented me. 2 years before the dreams stopped, the ones where I walked down the aisle only to find no groom waiting. Sometimes I see Nathan's name in friends' posts. He's engaged again, to a woman who looks a little like me and a lot like someone who never says no. As for me, I still believe in love, but not the fantasy. Not in dusty rose napkins or fairy light rooftops. Not in sacrificing myself to keep up appearances. Now I believe in something else entirely. Boundaries, gut instincts, and the strength to walk away before someone stays long enough to ruin you. I never thought I'd become the kind of person in those stories, the ones where strangers in the comments roll their eyes and say, "Why didn't she just leave sooner?" I used to ask that same question. I used to think I was sharper than that, too logical to fall into something messy. But when you're the one inside of it, it doesn't feel so simple. The danger doesn't appear with flashing lights. It creeps in quietly, and by the time you notice, you're already tangled up. This started back in 2016. I was 22, working part-time at a boutique coffee shop in Maple Heights, a quiet town just outside Albany, New York. My life was routine: work, gym, home. Predictable, even boring. I had just ended a 3-year relationship, and one of my coworkers kept nudging me to try dating apps. "Just for fun," she laughed. "You don't have to marry anyone." That's how I met Eli Mercer. His profile wasn't flashy. No shirtless mirror selfies, no cheesy quotes. Just a normal-looking guy with dark hair, a neat smile, and a short blurb about liking animals and cooking. We chatted online for 2 days before he asked to meet. I hesitated. Usually I liked more time before jumping to real life. But he was polite, persistent without being pushy, and seemed harmless. We agreed on a small Italian restaurant downtown. It felt public, neutral, safe. When he walked in, I remember thinking how unassuming he looked. He had this steady, calm voice, and when he asked me questions, he actually listened. His eye contact was intense but not uncomfortable. He made me feel like what I was saying mattered. Looking back, that's what drew me in. He made me feel seen. After 2 weeks of casual dinners and coffee dates, we were officially a couple. At first, it was nice. Eli was attentive. He'd walk me to my car after work, surprise me with coffee during my shifts. He wasn't big on public affection, but in private, he was thoughtful. We cooked together, curled up watching horror movies, talked about our dreams like we were building something. I started to think this could turn into something serious, but slowly the edges began to twist. It started with little questions. "Who were you talking to at the gym today? Why didn't you answer for 15 minutes? You still keep in touch with your ex?" At first I brushed it off, figured he was just insecure. If I reassured him, maybe he'd relax. But he didn't. Each day the questions grew sharper, more pointed, like little accusations disguised as curiosity. One evening after work, I mentioned that Marcus, one of my co-workers who'd been around for over a year, helped me move some heavy boxes. Eli froze. "Why didn't you ask one of the girls to help?" "Because Marcus was right there," I said. It wasn't a big deal. He folded his arms across his chest, his jaw tight. "So you just let any guy put his hands all over your stuff?" I laughed, waiting for the punchline, but his face stayed rigid. "No, Eli," I said carefully. He helped lift a box. "That's it." He stared at me for a long time before muttering that he needed air and walking out. That night, for the first time, I turned my phone on silent. I stayed with Eli for 2 months. I know that sounds long, but if you've ever been inside something manipulative, you'll understand. It doesn't hit you all at once. He didn't scream or raise a hand. Instead, he chipped away slowly. At first, it looked like jealousy. Then I realized it was control. If I didn't text back quickly enough, he'd ice me out for a whole day. If I missed a call, I'd get a passive-aggressive message. "Hope you're okay. Unless you're out with someone better." By the end of 8 weeks, I felt drained, like my life wasn't mine anymore. I just wanted to breathe again. I finally decided to end it. We met in a park near his apartment where it felt safe, public. I told him it was over. He didn't yell or beg. He just stared, his silence colder than shouting could ever be. Then he nodded. "You'll regret this," he said softly. "I'm the only one who really sees you." I didn't answer. I just walked away, my skin prickling. I thought that was the end, but it wasn't. At first, it was just a text a week later. "Just thinking about you. Hope you're good." I ignored it. Then another. "You really think some loser like Marcus is better than me?" Blocked numbers weren't the end of it. He switched to burner apps, emails, even anonymous texts. "You're making a mistake. You're going to end up alone. You owe me closure." The messages came like waves, constant and suffocating. I changed my number. I told my manager what was happening, and she rearranged my shifts so Eli wouldn't be able to predict when I worked. But it didn't stop him. The first time I saw him in person after the breakup was at the grocery store. I was in the baking aisle comparing cake mixes when I heard my name. Maya, I froze. My whole body tightened before I even turned. And there he was, smiling as if running into me was the most natural thing in the world. "Didn't expect to see you here," he said lightly. My heart slammed against my ribs. "I have nothing to say to you," I managed. "You don't have to," he said, still smiling. "I just wanted to see you." I started backing away. "Don't follow me. I'm not following you. I shop here too," he said, his tone casual, rehearsed. I abandoned the cart and walked straight to the parking lot, forcing my steps to stay steady. Then I heard his voice rising behind me. "Maya, don't walk away from me. Don't do this." Heads turned. I didn't. I climbed into my car, locked the doors, and drove off while he stood there just watching. 2 days later, he came to my job. I was halfway through painting a client's nails when the bell above the salon door chimed. I glanced up and froze. Eli. He walked in like any customer would, sat down in the waiting area, and just stared. My throat went dry. I leaned toward my coworker, Jasmine, and whispered, "Call the police." She glanced from me to him, nodded quickly. Eli stood and took a step closer. "Can we talk?" "Just a few minutes outside." "No, please," I said, shaking my head. My voice trembled. "You're not supposed to be here." His face hardened. "Why are you making me look crazy?" He stepped forward, but Jasmine immediately slid between us, her stance firm. "You need to leave right now or the cops will meet you here." He stared at her, then at me. His eyes burned, but he turned and walked out. When the police came, they took a report. But their words chilled me more than Eli's stare. Unless he physically hurt me or made a direct threat, there wasn't much they could do. I felt hollow, exposed, like safety was something I couldn't earn back. A week passed without contact. I started to breathe again, telling myself maybe it was finally over. Until the knock came. It was just after 11:30 p.m. I was curled up on the couch watching a show when I heard it. One knock, then another, then pounding. My blood ran cold. I crept to the door and looked through the peephole. Eli. I staggered back. He didn't look right. Sweaty, disheveled, pacing like he was unraveling. His voice cracked the silence. "I know you're home. I see your car." He hammered the door with his fist, then kicked it. Hands shaking, I dialed 911. "Please hurry," I whispered into the phone. "Maya, open the door," he shouted, louder, wilder. Then came the sound of breaking glass. My stomach dropped. He was inside. He stormed through the window frame, eyes wild, voice hoarse. "Why would you ghost me after everything?" I stumbled backward down the hall, clutching my phone, my breath short and sharp. He didn't have a weapon, but he didn't need one. His presence alone was a weapon. When he lunged and grabbed my arm, I screamed. The front door burst open. "Police!" 2 officers charged in, tackling him to the ground. It was over in seconds, but the sound of him screaming my name as they dragged him out still echoes in my skull. He was arrested, charged with breaking and entering. He served 30 days in jail. It wasn't long, but it was enough for me to move, change my number, replace my locks, and rearrange my routines. I haven't seen him since. Still, I check the peephole at night. I glance over my shoulder in parking lots. I wake at 3 a.m. with my heart racing, certain I heard a knock. People tell me I'm safe now. Maybe I am, but fear doesn't need a reason. It only needs a memory. And Eli, he left me with enough memories to last a lifetime. I never thought I'd become one of those girls, the kind who mistakes a fairy tale beginning for real love, only to wake up too late and realize the whole thing was a trap. I always believed I was sharper than that, grounded, the type who could spot a lie before it even left someone's lips. But when it came to Ethan Carter, I didn't just fall. I crashed headfirst. It started during the spring semester of my sophomore year, right after I transferred to Briar Glen High. The school sat on the edge of a small Pennsylvania town, the kind of place where everyone swore they knew everyone else's business. I was the new girl, an average face, better than average grades, and a quiet way of slipping unnoticed into any crowd. That was exactly how I wanted it. No attention. Not after the move. Not after what I'd left behind at my last school. My only plan was survival. keep my head down, finish the year, and leave without making a mark. Then Ethan happened. Ethan Carter was the golden boy of Briar Glen. He didn't just fit in, he owned the place. Tall with a calm kind of charisma, polite to teachers, casually magnetic with the girls, and effortlessly athletic. He was the boy parents trusted without question. The boy who made other boys insecure without needing to try. His hazel eyes always seemed on the edge of laughter, like he lived in a brighter, easier world than the rest of us. I don't know why he noticed me. Maybe because I wasn't tripping over myself to get his attention like half the school. Or maybe for a moment he actually did like me. It's hard to know now looking back, but one day he was just holding the door open for me after chemistry. And the next we were walking the halls together, hands laced, like something scripted for a Netflix drama. My name is Lena Moore, by the way, and back then, I thought I was the luckiest girl in Briar Glen. For the first 2 months, being with Ethan felt like I'd stumbled into someone else's life, a better life that couldn't possibly belong to me. We'd walk home together, splitting fries at Louie's diner or lie in his backyard while the stars blinked into place. He called me Bright Eyes whenever I spiraled into overthinking. I'd trace the tiny freckle under his left eye with my thumb. It was stupid, mushy, perfect, even my mom noticed. "He seems too good to be true," she said one night while folding laundry, her brow creased in that subtle warning way only moms can manage, like she could already feel the weather changing. But I brushed her off. I brushed everyone off. Because when you're inside something that feels like love, storm clouds look an awful lot like fireworks. Then the changes came. Small at first, the kind you almost convince yourself you imagined. He stopped walking me home. Meetings, detention, just stuff, he'd say. His texts grew shorter, slower. The easy laughter I loved in him started sounding forced. One day his phone's lock screen, our selfie, was gone, replaced with a picture of some anonymous forest. I found out from someone else that he'd dropped student council. When I asked him why, he just shrugged like it didn't matter. I told myself not to panic. Maybe he was stressed. Or maybe he's just losing interest, Jenna, my best friend, said when I confided in her. She chewed her gum with that brutal honesty only best friends can get away with. Senior stuff. College stress. Or maybe he's just done, but I held on. Because when you're already drowning, you don't let go of the last thing you're clinging to. The last real conversation we had was short, clipped. "Hey, Ethan, can we talk?" I asked. He glanced at his watch, then back at me. "I've got like 10 minutes. What's up? Are we okay?" "Yeah, of course." "Why wouldn't we be?" He smiled that same crooked grin, but his eyes gave him away. They were flat, unreadable. I didn't believe him, but I forced myself to. It was a Thursday when everything shifted. A half day, I remember, because I stayed late, helping set up for student council. That was the moment the floor gave way. I wasn't even on student council anymore. I stayed late out of habit, or maybe out of some foolish hope that Ethan would show up and everything would snap back to normal. Only 2 of us remained in the empty gym, me and Callie James, a soft-spoken junior with streaks of green in her hair and paint-smeared hoodies. I didn't know her well, but she carried herself like she belonged to another world, always sketchbook in hand, headphones around her neck. We ended up talking as we strung up fairy lights. I hadn't planned to spill everything, the weird silences, the lies, the ache in my chest, but I did. Callie listened quietly, nodding at intervals, letting me unravel. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "He's hiding something," she murmured. "But it's not another girl," I paused. "What do you mean?" Her green eyes met mine, steady and sharp. "Have you ever wondered why no one knows where Ethan lives?" "What are you talking about?" "He has a house. I've dropped him off a few blocks away. He said his parents are strict about visitors." Callie didn't answer. She just looked at me. The kind of knowing look that makes your skin crawl. "Be careful, Lena. There's a reason he picked you." I left around 8:30. The sky had darkened to the bruised color of promises broken. The streets were almost empty. As I rounded the corner near the school gates, I saw him. Ethan leaning against a lamppost like he had all the time in the world. "Hey," he said softly. "I was waiting for you." I tried to walk past him, but he stepped in front of me. "Let me walk you home." The walk was silent, heavy. Every footstep between us felt like a wedge. Halfway through, he turned. "Lena, what's wrong?" I snapped, my voice sharp. "Are you cheating on me?" He froze. "What?" "Don't lie. Just tell me, please, I need to know." His expression was unreadable. For a moment I thought I saw panic flicker across his face. Then there was a rustling in the trees. We both turned. "Probably a raccoon," I said, forcing a laugh. But Ethan didn't laugh. He grabbed my hand. "We need to run," and we did. We bolted into a deserted playground near Maple Street. Moonlight shimmered on the rusted slide. The swing squeaked in the wind. I was panting, confused. "What the hell is going on?" I gasped. His face was pale. "Someone's following us. Someone who's been following me for months." "What? Who?" "They threatened you. In letters. Said if I didn't break up with you, they'd kill you." My blood ran cold. "Who would?" "I think they're from student council," he said. Before I could ask more, a creaking sound froze us. Metal on metal. Something or someone was climbing the slide. We didn't wait. We ran again, darting down Burwood Avenue before ducking behind a tree. Whoever it was had followed. Then I saw them, a figure sprinting past. I stuck my foot out. They tumbled. Ethan pinned them. I ripped off the hoodie. It was Callie. Her lip was split, eyes wide with terror. "Lena," she gasped. "You need to run. He's not who you think. He's not cheating. He's a murderer." I froze. Ethan stood behind her, calm, almost soothing. "She's lying," he said smoothly. "She's obsessed with me. Been following us for weeks." I looked into Callie's eyes. They pleaded, screamed, begged me to see the truth. But I was exhausted, confused, scared. I walked away. The next day, Callie wasn't at school. The office said she'd transferred. No one knew where. Ethan and I stayed together. He was sweeter, calmer. He even invited me over. His house felt strange, too clean, too quiet. His parents were away. In the basement, he showed me a box. "These are the hearts," he said. She sent them. I looked inside. They weren't animal hearts. My stomach twisted. They were human. And one had a tiny tattoo in the corner. A clover, the same one Callie had on her wrist. That night I didn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. The next morning Ethan kissed my forehead. "You believe me, right?" I smiled. Of course, but deep down I was already planning. Because the only thing scarier than knowing he was a murderer was realizing I was next. I should have walked away that night. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because nothing did. And that's the thing. Silence is sometimes more dangerous than chaos. When someone drifts into your life so quietly, you don't notice the warning signs until they've already found a way inside. Your home, your thoughts every damn day. Back then I was living in Hammond, Indiana. In a one-bedroom apartment I could barely keep afloat. Rent was late more often than not. I worked long, bruising shifts at a car parts warehouse just outside of town. 10, sometimes 12 hours. My feet always ached and overtime never seemed to end. Weekends were my oxygen, my only escape. That's when I met Lena. It was a Saturday night, and I went out with a few guys from work. Daniel, Marcus, and Kyle. Nothing wild, just beers, darts, the same dumb jokes we always recycled. We ended up at the Gaslight, a dive bar with sticky tables and a jukebox that always skipped. That's where I saw her. Lena stood at the bar with a friend, laughing at something I couldn't hear. Long, dark hair spilling over a leather jacket. A smile so confident it made the whole room seem smaller. She was the type of girl you notice but tell yourself not to approach. Out of your league, no chance. But I was drunk enough to try. I slid in beside her as she waited for her drink. "Can I buy you another one you're not going to like?" She turned, studying me with this amused glint in her eyes. "That depends. Are you going to stare at me the whole time I drink it?" "Maybe," I said. "But only so I'll remember this moment when you slap me." She smirked. Weirdly charming. "I'm Lena," we talked. For hours it felt like. Her friend left early, but she stayed. One drink became 3. Then we were outside sharing a cigarette and talking about old bands, half-forgotten dreams, and why we both hated our jobs. She complained about customers in retail. I made a joke about car parts having more personality than people. She laughed, really laughed. At the end of the night, she didn't kiss me. Instead, she said, "You're not like other guys." I should have recognized that as a red flag, but back then it felt like a gift. Within 2 weeks, we were dating. Fast. Too fast. The kind of fast where you blink and realize you haven't seen your friends in days because every night is spent at her place or mine. Lena had this way of looking at me like I mattered, like I was someone worth being noticed. I'd never felt that before, so I let myself fall. She started leaving things behind: a toothbrush, a hoodie, hair ties. Then came her charger, her makeup bag. Eventually, I didn't even ask why she needed to stay every night. It just became the norm. The first couple of weeks were fun, even intoxicating. But the cracks showed early. Once we were walking through a strip mall when I ran into Becca, a co-worker from receiving. She waved and smiled, nothing more. Lena's hand in mine turned cold, rigid. "Who was that?" she asked the second Becca walked away. "Becca," I said. "She works with me." She smiled at you like she wanted something. I laughed. "Lena, she's married. 2 kids, she's still a bitch." I stopped dead. "What the hell? Where's that coming from?" She looked at me as though I was the one out of line. "I'm just saying. Pay more attention. Girls like that are always looking." I should have walked away then. Instead, I told myself it was insecurity, just baggage. Everyone has some, right? It didn't take long before the weight crushed me. By 2 months, I couldn't breathe. If I didn't answer her texts within 5 minutes, my phone would light up with 15 more. She accused me of cheating because I had a picture of my sister on my fridge. My sister. The final straw came when she showed up at my job during my break just to see if I was with someone. My supervisor pulled me aside, awkward, concerned. "Man, she's scaring your coworkers." So I ended it. We sat in my apartment. I tried to be gentle, told her it was too much, too fast, that I needed space. She just stared for a long time, then smiled. "Okay," she said softly, "if that's what you want." She kissed me on the cheek, stood, and left. I sat there stunned, waiting for the explosion that never came. Was that it? I muttered to myself. That night I got home from work around 8 p.m. The street was quiet, empty, except for a silver Honda Civic parked across the road. The same kind Lena drove. Scratches on the bumper, black dice hanging from the rear view. My chest tightened. She never got out. Just sat there, engine off. I watched from the kitchen window for half an hour, waiting for her to knock, to yell, to do something. Nothing, just silence. Eventually, I pulled the blinds shut, convincing myself it was fine. The next morning, the car was gone. The following day, I drove to Daniel's. No Civic on my street. But halfway there, I checked my mirror and saw it 2 cars back. Same scratches, same dice swaying gently with every turn. I didn't tell Daniel at first. When I left his place, I took random turns, looping streets at odd angles just to see if she was still there. Eventually, the Civic was gone. I told myself I was imagining it. That night, when I pulled into my apartment, her car was back outside, waiting. Same spot, same silence. I finally grabbed my phone and typed, "Lena, I saw your car outside again. Please stop doing this." I'm serious. No reply. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept getting up to check the blinds, heart racing each time. Around 3 a.m., the Civic was gone, but the unease stayed in my chest like a stone. The next morning was quiet, almost deceptively so. I tried to tell myself it was over, but that night it escalated. Just after midnight, half asleep in bed, I heard it. Soft, deliberate. The unmistakable scrape of fingernails dragging across glass. My blood went cold. I turned my head slowly toward the window. She was there. Lena's face hovered inches from the glass, her wide eyes fixed on me, unblinking, hungry. For a second, neither of us moved. Then she flinched as if caught in a crime and bolted into the shadows. I shot upright, chest pounding. My hands shook as I dialed 911. By the time the cops arrived, she was gone. I gave them her name, her car's description. They wrote a report, but I didn't press charges. Part of me hoped that just involving them would scare her off. It didn't. Days passed. No car, no texts. I started to breathe again, to pretend life was returning to normal. Until the small things began. My trash can moved from where I'd left it. A cigarette butt on the porch. I don't smoke. The doorknob felt tested, slightly turned like someone had tried it before leaving. And then came the rabbit. A small stuffed toy, ugly blue with matted fur. One she had won for me at a county fair on a sticky summer night months before. I hadn't seen it since, and now it sat propped against my door like a sick offering. I picked it up with trembling hands, hurled it into the dumpster. My stomach knotted with dread. That night I heard footsteps in the alley behind my apartment. My bedroom window faced it. I killed the light, crept forward, and pulled back the curtain an inch. She was there, just standing, not trying to break in, just watching. Something in me snapped. The next day, against every shred of better judgment, I drove to her apartment. I needed answers, closure, anything. She opened the door as though she had been waiting. "You look tired," she said casually, her eyes scanning me. "Are you okay?" "You need to leave me alone, Lena," I said, my voice trembling with anger. "This isn't normal." "You're stalking me. This is serious." She blinked once, slow, like she didn't understand the words. "I haven't been anywhere near your place." "I saw you," I hissed. "At my window, outside my door. Your car, everything." She leaned against the doorframe, almost bored. "You really think I'd do that?" "You broke up with me. I'm moving on. Maybe you should too." Then she closed the door in my face. That night I locked every window, checked and rechecked every door until my hands hurt. Still, sleep wouldn't come. Around 3 a.m. I jolted awake, choking on my own breath like something had pulled me out of a nightmare. And then I heard it, the back door creaking open. I grabbed the bat from my closet, crept into the kitchen. The door stood wide. On the steps outside, barefoot, scratched hands trembling, stood Lena. Her face was calm, almost serene. She tilted her head, eyes gleaming in the dark. "You're mine," she whispered. "You just don't see it yet." I slammed the door, locked it, and called the police with shaking hands. By the time they arrived, she was gone. This time I pressed charges. I had enough evidence. A restraining order followed, and after that night I never saw Lena again. It's been almost 3 years. I've moved twice, switched jobs, started over in new towns, yet the feeling never left. Sometimes when I park my car at night or glance at my bedroom window, my skin crawls. The old sensation of being watched. I haven't heard from Lena since, but I still check the locks, every window, every night, because once someone invades your life like that, quietly, obsessively, it changes you, forever. And sometimes the most terrifying thing in the world isn't a ghost or a monster. It's the person who once kissed your cheek and told you that you were different.